That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and taking this journey inside the Black Vault with me. I'm your host, John Greenwald Jr., founder and creator of theblackvault.com, and we are on the eve of the much anticipated UAP hearing. Now, joining me today, and I'm excited about this interview, is investigative journalist and professor at Johns Hopkins, Matt Laszlo. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you've been incredibly busy, but thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And the reason why I'm looking forward to this, and I told you this off the air, but I want to tell you on as well, is I have a lot of respect for those that actually get out into the field, they talk to people, they do their own journalism, which is actually pretty rare nowadays, simply because most people, they sit in a chair. I call it copy and paste journalism. They take somebody else's work, they fumble around the words a little bit, and they call it their own. But you're in the field. You are talking to congressmen, senators, talking about the UAP hearing and beyond. But before we get into that, I want to back up a little bit. It's your first time on the show. Hopefully you'll come back. But give everybody a little bit of background about your work and what is it exactly that you cover.
So I've been covering Congress now 17 years. Been a contributor at Vice News Tonight, Rolling Stone, Playboy, currently a contributor at Wired Magazine and Raw Story. So I like to write for the fun ones, I guess. But then historically, I've covered Congress for a bunch of local NPR stations and regional outlets. So I'm also a board member of the Regional Reporters Association. Then I've been teaching at Johns Hopkins since 2016. I teach on history of the media, history of rhetoric, but with an eye towards how politicians' rhetoric has kind of adapted with new mediums over time. I kind of love covering Congress because I get to study lawmakers and all that in real time. But I guess to take a few steps back, I come at Congress, I interview liars for a living. So even though I know Congress, I kind of see through them, and I think many of them kind of know it. So that's where I started this new venture, askapoll.com, and especially knowing, because I'm a media prof and studying just the gross numbers. What I think trust in the media now, according to Gallup, it's like 50% of Americans don't even distrust the media. They think reporters are actually actively lying to them, which is where I came up with the idea of Ask a Poll, because I want to put the people in the driver's seat. So we call it the people-powered press corps. So you all send your questions in, become a part of our community dialogue, and then I take those questions directly to lawmakers, which I'm hoping will rid some of you all of the deep-rooted cynicism that's in me, because I work with the press corps and I can't say many of them have impressed me over the years. Some have, but I think I've avoided becoming a swamp creature, but always with your help and then with the help of the bands I hang out with. I used to cover entertainment in a past life.
Okay. And so then with all of that background, what got you to UFOs?
So that's where this one, at the start of this Congress, remember, we had all these balloons floating over America. And then after they shot down that Chinese spy balloon, well, within a span of 3 days, the Air Force shot down 3 objects. And I guess there's one in Alaska that we still don't know what it is, which I've been pressing Senators Murkowski and Sullivan on to see if they were going to request actual video of that shoot down from the Pentagon, because I know they've been briefed on it. But so that's where the press corps, me included, started looking into this, but very broadly, just at UAPs. But then David Grush hit like a symbol, and seeing lawmakers react to him, especially one of our first interviews was Marco Rubio, the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And what he said is, You know, we get a ton of these whistleblowers, you know, and have over the years since he's been here in Washington. But he said this was the first one that was vetted by the Inspector General, deemed important, and deemed parts of it verifiable or verified. And so seeing Rubio and others' reactions to his claims, and especially what woke up Congress, while David Grush claims there's recovered craft that the U.S. government has, you know, that one we'll be able to hopefully either see the craft or not. You know, that one should be fairly easy to verify if we get through all these layers of classification and government secrecy. But the second claim of Grush, that the government had all these SAPs or special access programs that it kept hidden from Congress, well, that, me as a congressional junkie, that made my ears stand up. And I knew that was something that I could take to every single lawmaker and say, hey, this whistleblower who the Inspector General vetted and says, and threw on Congress's lap, he says that the federal government's lying to you, you know, about these SAPs. And so many lawmakers still haven't looked into David Grush, but I'm still confronting all of them with that claim. You know, so part of it's coming from that congressional institutionalist angle. And knowing that this Congress, like the past Congress and the one before it, Congress these days just cedes most all of their power to the executive branch. And again, professor and a congressional junkie. And so this issue, for one, like what, a year, 2 years ago, even like predating the first congressional hearing, 50 years on this, even after that hearing, if you would ask lawmakers about UFOs or UAPs, you know, they'd laugh at you, you know, they'd make a joke out of it. Not so in this Congress. And so there's this interesting window that opened. And yeah, I was there and I had askapol.com lined up. So especially once I did a Wired magazine piece on, you know, kind of putting Grush in what we call a conspiratorial Congress. You know, some people, you know, the conspiracies in this Congress run the gamut. Who would we see testify last week in the House? RFK Jr., et cetera. And so after that, you know, I got a lot of pushback from the UFO community because the piece was a little more snarky, but that's because it was, you know, putting a mirror up to this Congress and kind of asking the question, will this Congress be taken seriously, even if they do uncover craft or something like that? And so, yeah, I've got a front row seat and seeing you all, your energy, your knowledge, saying, hey, ask these questions, you didn't ask this, but then also seeing the reaction to, you know, Laszlo's snark aside, people were like, I think I interviewed 6 or 8 lawmakers. Usually for a feature, I'll interview 15 to 20 lawmakers. Only 8 or 10 make the piece. Sometimes that's been 50 senators every once in a while. And so, yeah, seeing the energy from the community and seeing some members of Congress really take it seriously, but others just brush it off, that just left me with more questions.
Before we get into the specifics of exactly who you spoke with, you mentioned a couple already, but what do you think has changed from this Congress to those past? You mentioned David Grush. Is it all hinging on that one whistleblower? Or obviously the UFO conversation has really went into overdrive in the last 5.5 years or so. What do you feel has changed that put this kind of on the docket, so to speak?
Well, there's this interesting notion of whether lawmakers are supposed to lead their constituents or whether they're supposed to be led by their constituents. And it's, you know, kind of both and. But so this one, lawmakers do tend to be way behind on many issues from their constituents. But I think the polls are now like 65% or so of Americans are now, I forget the exact language, but they believe that there's life out there beyond us. And I think part of that stems from, you know, us being in this new technological era with smartphones, so we're seeing a lot more things that aren't easily explained away. And so, yeah, Congress in the last one started looking into this, and I'm curious, and I want to go circle back with those lawmakers, but I'm curious if that was because of increased pressure from their constituents. But you definitely have more lawmakers in this Congress who are open to the idea of extraterrestrial beings out there, and then even you couple that with what we're seeing right now come in from the James Webb Space Telescope, and so like our very limited, finite understanding of things just got a lot bigger, if still very limited. And every week it seems we're learning new things about the solar system from the James Webb Space Telescope. So as our smartphones are collecting more here on Earth, James Webb's collecting more out there in the nether reaches. And I think it's kind of this perfect combo. And then you throw Grush into the mix, boom, that's the perfect combo. Or that's three, so not a combo.
Perfect trio. So those that you've talked to, I know that you've talked to Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee. Let's start there, because he's leading the charge with this hearing tomorrow, and arguably he is the absolute most vocal about a conspiracy and cover-up. Months ago, I was surprised to see him retweet one of my tweets about UFOs. Now it's becoming a little bit more common for him to do that, but just straight out calling it a cover-up. I was surprised by that, because it's not every day where a sitting congressman or congresswoman tweets stuff like that. And again, now it's becoming more frequent. So let's start with him. What has your experience been with him? And as somebody who's covered Congress for so long, what is your reaction to his feelings about UAP and the importance of this cover-up that he wants to highlight?
Burchett's this super interesting guy. If you'll listen to some of the audio that we posted, I think maybe 2 interviews with him on askapol.com. And in the middle of the interview, he'll stop 3-4 times because all these lawmakers, Republicans and Democrats, are stopping him to say hello. In the last one, I think it was Congressman Jesse Jackson, who I didn't even know was a congressman. I'm from Illinois, but it's Reverend Jesse Jackson's son. Burchett's a Republican from Tennessee. And so to hear Jackson stopped him, and Burchett said, "Hey, thank you so much for checking on me when I was sick." And then said, "Hey, when you're down, you better come down to the South. I want to treat you to some good old Southern barbecue." I was just like, what? You just don't see that kind of bipartisanship in this Congress. And I think a big part of that is just the jovial, genteel nature of Burchett. He's always cracking jokes. He's got this light side to him that is really appreciated in the building where historically there was a caning in the building. Now there's, digital death threats flying between the parties. And so he stands out for that, let alone with his thoughts on UAPs and UFOs. And so it's interesting now to see, as the hearing day approaches, and last week after their big press conference, you started hearing a lot more of the mainstream reporters hop on the issue, kind of looking for something to embarrass them with. I forget the questions they were asking, but one reporter was, I think they were just asking straight up, about aliens or whatever, and not asking about David Grush, and you can kind of tell. I'm curious about Grush and what he knows when, I hate the term gotcha journalism or whatever, but the questions felt leading in a dishonest way. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Burchett and Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, how they handle this. There's also a couple Democrats who are going to be at the hearing who are, fully on board with this. And so it'll be interesting. The interview we dropped last night on Ask a Poll was with Oversight Chair James Comer, and I can't tell. Like, he told me, yeah, I haven't even looked into David Grush's claims at all, and so I can't tell if he's trying to wash his hands of this and say, hey, this is all on Burchett and Luna, or if he thinks there's a there. You can tell that, Burchett complained last week about different staffers from the intelligence community, whether that staffers in Congress, from the Intel Committee, I don't know. But he was complaining that there's just been all this pressure on this hearing and that people were getting cold feet. And so when the lights click on tomorrow with, the media from around the globe in attendance, it'll be interesting to see, for one, the case Burchett and Luna make, and that the witnesses obviously make. And it's going to be interesting to see how the media responds to that. Now, it seems like the dynamics here, like with many dynamics in Congress, are that the Senate investigations are currently a little more trusted. Even what Comer himself told me, because, I asked him about these charges that, these far right Freedom Caucus people are running this hearing, they're loonies, ... Comer's like, hey, Chuck Schumer just moved a UAP bill. So even Comer himself was saying, hey, it's not just us, it's not just the fringe right members. And so Burchett, just take it back to him, he's interesting because he's not, I wouldn't say he's intellectually respected, or maybe ideologically respected by the other side of the aisle. This is a hyper partisan Congress. But collegially, they love him. And so there is an innate trust they have with him because he's been genuine, and so it'll be really interesting to see how he threads that needle. And this does make me want to talk to him. I'm talking to him later today before we go live tonight with dropping some more of our exclusive interviews. I'm now curious how Burchett first got into this issue, with Congresswoman Luna. She was Air Force, and so I haven't talked to her about how she got into it, but, you can see what a lot of the videos coming out, or the newer ones that the government's been releasing, even in the last hearing a couple of years ago, well, that's Air Force footage. And so, yeah, thanks for the question for Mr. Burchett. I'll circle back once he answers it.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you did. Maybe I'll throw this out to you if it sparks another question, because I posted this on social media, but I want to bring it up to you. I very much am looking forward to the hearing tomorrow. I want to see what's going on, and we'll talk about whether or not they made the right decisions in your mind on the witnesses that they did choose. But that being said, the pushback, the ramp up to this, especially in the last week, has been fascinating for somebody like me to watch, because I've been in and around this field for a long time. I deal with all government secrets, but UFOs has always had kind of a special place in my heart, just for a personal fascination reason. No experience of my own, but it's just a curiosity. And the ramp up to this has seen Burchett have these pushbacks from NASA when he said NASA backed out of tomorrow's hearing. And then NASA, to my surprise, which I don't see often anyway with this topic, responded to a friend of mine, Dan Warren. So props to him, who posed the question, why did you back out? And NASA completely said, no, we didn't. That I think it was David Spergel who was invited but declined, which is kind of understandable if they don't want to get entwined with the whistleblower talk. I mean, I can understand that from their perspective. They're also not dealing with classified information much in NASA anyway, so it's to me, it's a faulty scientific study anyway, but that's a different show. But pushback from NASA and then pushback from Eglin, to where Eglin put out the statement that said, well, they're just not cleared to hear the information. So when you hear Burchett and Congresswoman Luna say we were denied access and got in a fight with the general, that base fires back and says, hey, wait a minute, you guys aren't even cleared. So I'm not saying who's right or wrong. All I'm saying is it's so fascinating to see play out. And I want to know what the congressmen and congresswomen are essentially going to do with that, because that's challenging their credibility in an open forum. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the pushback? You think it's all just part of the cover-up? Do you think it's political grandstanding? Is it both?
This is the curious one. And it's, so I'm a congressional reporter. I go to the White House a couple times a year, but it's a waste of my time. I'm a man of the people, or something like that. I like the access we get in Congress, and I know the institution. And that's where a reporter like me is going to naturally have to rely on reporting from, people at the Pentagon who are sourced there, people who are sourced at NASA. And because right now, I guess I don't have a good answer to that, because I do not see, in my 17 years, I can't remember an agency like NASA really stepping in it, and calling a congressman a liar publicly like that. So even I did a triple take last week, and I'm still in the midst of that triple take. And especially with NASA coming out so strong there, well, now does Burchett or Luna say, hey, we want a follow-up hearing because it seems like you guys want to talk, And now maybe they don't have much to say. Maybe they do. And so that one was curious to me, seeing, like, when Burchett told me last week that the staffers were getting more involved, and that they were, you started to hear more of the whisper campaigns, trying to discredit the investigation in the House, not so much discrediting the lawmakers, but you'll probably hear it more with, well, no, they'll be couched in the terms of these two Freedom Caucus folks. Whereas these issues don't really have much to do with that. Freedom Caucus is supposed to be focused on fiscal issues and stuff like that. And then seeing some of those other Democrats up there, and including Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, she's been really pushing forward with the investigation in the Senate, and same with Rubio over there. And so this one doesn't cut across those normal political lines. Mm-hmm. But in the lead up to this hearing, it kind of, in the past week, it's felt like it's the normal partisanship, Biden administration, poo-pooing anything coming from these two fringe right lawmakers. When you take a step back, and in reality, no, it's not two fringe lawmakers. A lot of lawmakers in this Congress have a lot of questions, and the Pentagon and NASA have not been forthcoming with them in the past, at least in a satisfactory way to many lawmakers. So I get the pushback from those agencies, but show us your cards.
Yeah, and this is, we can move on from Burchett after this, but one last kind of thing, when he's coming out with these very bold claims, and I posted myself, I mean, I've followed the Air Force's connection to this literally for 26, 27 years now, just drilling in through FOIA, especially with that military branch, what I consider this massive cover-up about the topic. But at the top of the show, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember your exact quote, you said that you essentially interview professional liars. That's how you said it, right? So with that said, how, as a journalist, what's that?
I say I interview liars for a living.
Liars for a living. So with that being said, from a journalist standpoint and your experience, you look at these essentially warring factions at this point. It's a war of the words, but they're butting heads like this in a public forum on Twitter, for the most part, how do you know really who to believe? Do you push the military branch to show their cards? Do you push the politicians to maybe step up a little bit more and say, hey, look, NASA fired back at you. Show us how they backed out. Did they confirm? And then say, you know what, never mind, or did somebody intervene? The one that I'm stuck on is Burchett's claim about the Pentagon giving pushback on witnesses that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I took away from that he had other people that he wanted to appear. The Pentagon pushed back. They essentially lost those one or two or however many people, but have Graves, Fravor, and Grush at this point. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm most intrigued by that. Who do you, as a journalist, push back on the hardest to try and show their cards and kind of prove what's being said?
All of them.
Okay.
Because whether it's the agencies who are, they have their fiefdoms and they want more money and they want to protect because it's power play, even we're seeing this with classified information, whoever has most secrets or whatever, there's power that comes with that. This one's interesting because the interview we put out last night with Comer, he kind of again washed his hands of it and said, I think Burchett's now gotten everyone he wanted, when like a month ago Comer told me that 2 witnesses who Burchett wanted didn't pass his committee's more political background check. And so I'm still a little confused on this one as to whether Burchett has everyone he wants, because it doesn't seem like he does. But then you have Chair Comer saying, head of the whole oversight committee, saying, we gave him everyone he wanted. One interesting thing, when I was first getting into this just like a month ago, I heard Burchett on Steve Bannon's The War Room talking about, and what he said then stood out to me, because he said his feeling was that him and Luna only have one shot on this. And so he made it seem like, at least initially, they were just granted one hearing on this. And so that's, all your marbles. We'll see how tomorrow goes, because just knowing how the public is hungry for answers, and even we're playing this tonight on our live listening session, but Adam Schiff, he got booted off the got booted off the House Intelligence Committee, but so he hasn't really been able to look into Grush, but he's still got big questions about these phenomena. And, he was just the head of the House Intelligence Committee. So the fact that he's curious, he had all this classified information, but still has questions and not answers, that makes me think that Pentagon and people in those communities aren't being forthcoming. Now, whether that's a national security claim or whatever, or whether it's actually them covering this stuff up and keeping it secret from Congress, it seems like this Congress is really set on putting a fine point on that debate, so that at least by the end of this, we'll know where the secrets are, and hopefully they'll be public by then, because it seems like right now in Congress, there's a couple of different full court presses going on, Senate side, House side, but then also Intelligence Committee and Armed Services Committees exploring it. And so Intelligence Committee is going to be different than Armed Services Committee. Armed Services is more focused on war and, the Pentagon and the machinery of war, all that stuff. And so Intelligence Committee, they have, broader portfolio. They also know a lot more secrets, and are also held to a higher standard. Mm-hmm. They know a lot of stuff that they're not allowed to tell us. And so that's again why Senator Gillibrand's an interesting one to watch, because she's on both the Armed Services Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee. So she's kind of got a foot in both worlds.
Did it surprise you at all that, and you mentioned Comer, he kind of washed his hands of it, that these lawmakers don't have more of a clue? I know some of them do and follow it pretty closely, but when you talk about the claims of David Grush, you are talking about humanity-altering, world-changing information that would have an impact not only on our knowledge about our place in the universe, but so much more. I mean, the implications are absolutely staggering. So does it surprise you that more aren't leading the charge?
Yes and no. It's rare that you see, lawmakers kind of have their fiefdoms. Some might be a tax wonk, so they're going to be on the Ways and Means Committee. If you're a farmer, boom, you serve on the Agriculture Committee. You have a lot of, and it kind of annoys us in the press corps, because you have a lot of lawmakers who it almost feels like they put blinders on just so they don't have to talk to us, whether it's about what former President Trump is doing over here, or, whether it's what Hunter Biden's doing over here, so some lawmakers really stay in their lanes. But again, that's why this issue stood out to me, because, hey, I think it's Rubio who says, either Grush was given bad information, or, pardon my French, but wake the fuck up. Like, these are seismic claims. And the fact that the Inspector General vetted them, sent them to Congress, that puts them at another level where, yeah, maybe it has surprised me a little bit to see. I mean, because I think you were going to talk about it, but Congress is about to be gone after this week for the whole month of August. So one thing I've been doing is trying to interview every United States senator on UAPs, UFOs, and David Grush in particular. So I've now talked to over 60% of senators, and the vast majority of them seem totally unaware. It seems like I'm kind of the first person to mention it to them, or they had heard about it but hadn't really looked into it. Now the people, hopefully by the end of this week, hopefully I'll have all the senators, but I only have 2 members left on the Senate Intelligence Committee still to interview. Looking for you, Michael Bennett and Dianne Feinstein, but I saw her being
2 huge fans of this show, so you're good shouting out that.
Well, and so I'm curious, because some members on the Senate Intelligence Committee, who was it? One kind of quipped, but he's like, well, if I knew that, I couldn't tell you. Could have been Tillis or one of them. But so it's interesting. And with some of the Senate Intel members, you kind of get the feeling that they know some things that they're not allowed to tell us. So I'm curious if pressure builds on them, on the broader intelligence community, where, if pressure builds on Congress from the public, Congress is going to keep demanding more and more answers. And so there might be things that are classified now that may become unclassified in the near future. I'm curious how this one plays out, because even though you have many lawmakers playing ostrich, tossing their head in the sand, you got some of the most powerful lawmakers, especially in the Senate, investigating this. And so we'll see. There's definitely a clash going on here between the intel community and your Congress.
Going backwards, I think you said it was a Comer interview where he said that they kind of had one shot. Was that Comer that said that?
Burchett said it to Steve Bannon, but he made it seem like that was coming from Comer / coming from Speaker McCarthy.
So they have like one shot to kind of prove this if they're going to devote more time in the future. And
that's for this Congress. And again, that's where, like, if they hit a home run or, get a triple tomorrow, we might see another one.
Mm-hmm.
Especially looking at those poll numbers, 65% of the American people have, well, think they have an answer, but
Mm-hmm.
they want to know more on this.
Now, I want to say real quick, just to make sure that those on the audio version of this know, you've said your website a few times. I've flashed it on screen for those watching on YouTube, but it's askapol.com. That's spelled ASKAPOL.com. So make sure you've got the one L in there. And there's tons of articles here to read. And the one thing I haven't mentioned is a lot of these are exclusive just to your reporting. You're not parroting from the other news agencies. You are the one getting these recordings. You're putting them online. So again, kudos to you for that. So back to the witnesses for tomorrow. If it is that one shot, do you feel with everything that you've done and writing the articles that are on your website and so many exclusives, you're obviously doing your homework. Is this a setup for a potential home run? Or do you feel there should have been other people in the hot seat, even those currently in government, that may have given them more of that home run versus a base hit?
And this is where this one's interesting. And I'm a journalist in 2023. My thoughts don't matter. If anything, I get in the way. But this one's super curious because, again, you have the Senate and the House investigations. Not quite. I mean, they're going in tandem, but not together. Or no, they're going parallel, but not in tandem. And so it seems like the House, their investigation is much broader. And Congresswoman Luna, she tells me that, she hopes this hearing presents to the American people proof that there is life out there beyond Earth. Now, you wouldn't hear any senators say that. You might have some senators kind of thinking that. And so it's interesting that the House, their case is going to be broader. It seems like they're going to give a little more history into past government programs, exploring UFOs and whatnot. And some people are asking us at Ask a Poll, like, hey, does Burchett and them, do they have any plan to subpoena the people who corroborate David Grush, the whistleblower's story? Well, Senator Gillibrand in the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, her investigation would actually go through the Armed Services Committee, where she's the chairwoman of one of the subcommittees overseeing this. Well, she told me that she wants to hear Grush and the other people named in that first story by the debrief where Grush came out. That one will be interesting. And that's actually my question for Gillibrand tonight or this week. I'm curious if she's got a plan for a hearing and if she still wants to have Grush and the other people mentioned in that article that seem to corroborate his story. Now, it seems like what we have in the House tomorrow is Grush and not so much people corroborating his story, but corroborating the broader story, And so that's where I think having a divided Congress is great.
I can agree with that. Just to clarify with those named in the debrief article, is she going for the ones that were truly feeding Grush the information, or there were two that were mentioned in the debrief article? One was anonymous, but went through or was listed with a pseudonym. I think that was Jonathan Gray, but that was a false name. And then the other one, I think the last name was Nell. I forget the first name. But that being said, was she talking about them, or was she talking about truly getting to the root of where Grush heard about the non-human craft and the non-human dead pilots that he referenced?
The way I read it, and again, I'll circle back with her because
Mm-hmm.
that's a great question. The way I read it was she wanted those people immediately tied to Grush and mentioned in the article, or who spoke in the article and corroborated his story. Um, but then, you know, if Congress does its job, you know, you keep pulling threads. And so I think the way I understood it was, hey, once we get him, you know, if we don't see anything, and you know, and we get verifiable good testimony from these folks, then hey, we want to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I could see it broadening out. But I think Gillibrand and them want to start with, you know, you start small with what you can prove, and then slowly build your case and work your way out from there. But I'm not a senator, and so there's a
Yeah.
lot of this stuff that I'm not privy to.
No,
Wish I
and I appreciate your expertise and feedback on it, because we're all kind of learning together about how this is playing out. And the one thing that concerns me is something actually that you really just briefly touched on. But as they start small and they kind of, you know, branch out more and more, what worries me is that there are term limits to these senators and politicians, both term limits as max as they can go, but also they may get voted out. With that being said, what my worry is this takes forever. With anything government related, takes forever. But with politicians, you know, they want to do these hearings, and then 6 months, a year and a half later, they'll do another one. It worries me that the people that really are the driving force here, they could be gone by then, and you lose that motivation to do this. So how much, if any, how much does that impact all this?
I hear that 100%. And this is where I'm constantly playing devil's advocate. But one counter to that could be, hey, Harry Reid's been gone from the Senate for a long time. But what we saw last week with Schumer, Gillibrand, Young, and Rounds, and you know, that sixth group, well, they pushed through and got included in the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. They got included in that. A measure that Harry Reid, you know, very much close to his heart. You know, a bill demanding basically full transparency, it seems, on UAPs, their chosen term. And so that's where, oh, and Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, his office told me that, you know, the inspiration for that measure wasn't David Grush. The inspiration for that was Harry Reid, you know, and his legacy. And so that's where sometimes you do see members pass the baton.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's within their delegation, but honestly, I haven't seen. Yeah, Jackie Rosen, she, the senator, one of the senators from Nevada, and then Catherine Cortez Masto. Neither of them were really too familiar with Grush. Rosen, at the end of our interview, or later that day, she found me and she goes, "Well, now that you alerted me to this Grush guy," she goes, "I'm going to have some interesting reading tonight when I get home." And so that's where sometimes you see that baton passed within a delegation, or, you know, if a Democrat passes the seat to a Democrat or vice versa, a Republican to a Republican. But then also you see it just not within state delegations. Sometimes there's someone else in Congress who maybe wanted to be at the forefront of the issue, but maybe right now they're a freshman lawmaker and they're kind of waiting to see what happens in tomorrow's hearing. And so that's where I hear you, and you raise a good point on why to be a little pessimistic, because the people who are out in front of this issue are louder and seem more knowledgeable than we've seen in the past. But then maybe there's a little hope for optimism that they can share that wealth, for lack of a better term.
The one thing that I wanted to ask you, just again, because you're on the ground there, the last UAP hearing with the Senate, and Kirsten Gillibrand was obviously there the whole time. There was one other senator, a third had shown up, asked a question, then left. I was really let down at what appeared to be, to the general public, a lack of interest. There was rumors, but I mean, we can't confirm it. At least the general public can't at this point. That more people showed up to the classified briefing that happened right prior, and that's fine, the classified hearing, and that's fine. But if they truly are the voice of the people, I would hope that they would want to show up at the public hearing, get as much information for their constituents as possible. So with that said, what's the rumblings on who's going to show tomorrow? Like, I mean, are a lot of people telling you that should be showing up are going to show up? Have you even explored that at all?
Haven't totally explored it, but the House tends to be different. And even for tomorrow, it sounds like I confirmed, the chair, James Comer, told me that he plans to be there because he wants to learn about the issue. And Comer gave them the huge, massive oversight hearing room, even though it's a subcommittee investigating this. They're getting the big hearing room, which makes me think, especially with all the cameras that are going to be there and all the media from across the U.S., but then across the globe, you would think that many members would want to come for that. But also that's just kind of the nature of the House and how they work. The Senate, they just historically, and even today, they tend to respond less quickly to what the people are thinking. Part of that's the way the founders intended it, giving them 6-year terms, which, one could argue, they're becoming experts on the issues under their purview, which would help for this issue with some of those folks on these committees. But I'm curious, if you didn't hold that same hearing today, if you wouldn't have a fuller or at least more people come and sit on that dais. Because remember, just 2 years ago, this was so novel and new, hadn't been done in 50 years. And so, most news outlets were leading with, not funny X-File jokes, jokes that they thought were funny that no one else did. And so that's where you're starting to see the issue taken more seriously in Congress, but then also outside of it. And I am kind of intrigued on how, what the headlines are after tomorrow's hearing. And I think that could have a pretty big impact on what the Senate does or how many people would show up to publicly attach their name to this.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I think that's one that only time will tell. And I think, even though the media, the press corps isn't going to be up on the dais, I think we play a pretty big role in this. And I think thus far we've largely done a disservice.
This may be a real dumb question. I just don't know the answer. Is there a list or is it publicized on what media outlets are approved to attend? Because there is an approval process, right?
Not really. So technically I have my own bureau, the Laszlo Congressional Bureau, or LCB. So I just emailed and asked to RSVP. Let me check. Suspicious package. Oh, all clear. So I haven't heard back from them yet, but glad that suspicious package is cleaned up. And so we'll see. Even like my usual thing, I don't even want to be inside the hearing room. I'll listen to it, but then I'm sorry.
Did you say you do want to be or don't want to be?
I don't want to be. I stand in the hallway listening to it on C-SPAN, and then when lawmakers leave, that's when I ask them one-on-one questions as follow-ups to their questions for the witnesses. That's what I've been doing for 17 years. And
you just made the UFO community happy that's camping out as we speak outside of the room, hoping to get a seat, because there's a lot of rumors that they're not even going to get a seat. But I'm kind of surprised to hear that you stay out in the hallway, but now I totally understand why. So we don't know.
I'll pop in and I'll take some notes because I'm a feature writer. So I always take notes, like what color ties folks are wearing. I'll get a picture when the witnesses come in, and then kind of get a picture of the media frenzy and get a sense of it. But if I'm sitting in a seat, I'm neutered, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term. You know, I got my microphone. I want to use that.
No, that's seriously commendable. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. With
God bless C-SPAN. C-SPAN makes it happen because then I can hear them.
yeah. And for those who don't know, if you don't watch C-SPAN, they're also broadcasting, and I'm going to put it in the show notes link below. Not only will Matt's website be in there and some of the articles that we've touched on, there's tons of stuff, though. Please go check out his website, askapol.com. You can see it on your screen there. If you're listening to the audio, it's askapol.com. And again, check out all of his exclusives because he really has been killing it lately. So this will probably be one of the last questions here as we round third on the interview, and I want you back in the field rather than talking to me because it's an important day. Tomorrow, obviously, we're on the eve of it, so get as much as you can out there. But I think Matt, the journalist, probably wouldn't want to answer this. But Matt, my friend now, what do you expect tomorrow? What's your prediction on when you're listening on C-SPAN in the hallway? What do you think's going to happen during the hearing, and what do you think the immediate reaction is going to be to the general public?
And this even includes Professor Laszlo, I gave up on all predictions when Donald Trump won the GOP primary in 2016.
Yeah, that changed everybody's point of view.
I come from a family of conservatives, and I'm like, well, I got that one wrong. And so we'll see. I am definitely expecting a lot of snark from some members of the media. We're already starting to see that on the Twitters or X's or whatever we're calling it these days.
Yeah, I don't know.
Social media, we're starting to see that. But I definitely expect Luna and Burchett to come out very prepared to make a definitive argument. Now, we'll see if they can back it up. And the question for that is, how much are they allowed to back it up? You know, because we hear about the briefing they got that they had to demand down in Florida, where, Matt Gaetz and them, they say, and Luna and Burchett, they say they saw videos or whatever of craft that could not be human, according to their knowledge. I'm so curious, are we, the American people, going to be allowed to see any new footage or anything like that? Or are they going to be hampered in how much of the case they can actually bring to the American people? And so with that, I just don't know. They're going to definitely push the envelope they're going to want to release as much as they can. Now, the game might be rigged from the get-go. So we'll see.
No, just to add to that, I mean, my 2 cents, if it's even worth that, I wouldn't expect any type of visuals whatsoever because, sadly, Congress is not a release authority. You need somebody like a Kirkpatrick or somebody in there that can spearhead that release authority movement to get a new video out there. But
true, go ahead. But this is 2023.
That's true.
The Congress doesn't have a hearing without a visual aid of some kind. So
fair enough.
Maybe they'll replay the old videos. We'll see. But even this week, clicking around, there's a lot of footage out there that I don't think the American public has seen. We might have seen it, some of it in the last hearing. Mm-hmm. We might personally, you, me, and others in UFO Twitter community, we might have seen it, but that's where I'm curious how much the actual American public have seen on this. And so who knows? Pop your popcorn if you got it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the I know I said last question, but if I can just throw in one more. Have you heard rumblings that, and before I ask this, we haven't really talked about it, and I want to stress the importance of the two witnesses. We keep talking about Grush, but obviously Ryan Graves and David Fravor, both important voices in this. I don't have anything bad to say about their testimony. I think it's great to get it on the record. I don't expect anything new from them only because they have done their rounds of media interviews and so on and so forth. But I want to make sure that I add that into the show because we haven't really touched on them at all. Their voice is incredibly important.
See, I'm a reporter, so quick question to you.
Sure.
Are you Did it surprise you to see those two witnesses alongside Grush?
It did. Yeah.
Why is that?
So, and again, it has to be prefaced with their voices are incredibly important.
Yeah.
However, for those who have paid attention, and even just a small amount of attention, both individuals have done their rounds on media interviews. I don't think there's really any reason to doubt them. I don't think that there's any reason that they have to be under oath, but rather maybe submitted statements to support what I felt should be a more of a bigger hearing. Grush, I don't have a big, what's the right word I'm looking for? Like a big problem with. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. Not that I have a problem with the other two, but we've heard it. And I think if they are going for the home run, I would have loved to have seen, again, Grush, but bring in somebody else that's supporting him that told him the information. And let me just quickly say why. The Dopser review process of Grush, who approved at least we're led to believe this, approved him speaking about dead non-human pilots, about non-human craft, and everything that he says. We are led to believe that he cleared it with Dopser. That's not an endorsement, but rather that there's no classified information there. So then bring somebody in who had that firsthand, I saw that non-human dead body, or I work next door to it, whatever the story is. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but like whatever, fill in the blank, that's who I would have liked to have seen. So again, not taking away from David Fravor or Ryan Graves. They're awesome individuals. I'm glad that their voices and face are out there, and they need to be. But I think with a hearing like this, and you nailed it, that this is, or what you heard anyway, so wherever the true source of this should be a home run, that nails that. And I feel that this issue deserves at that home run, the grand slam. And it's not that those two individuals won't give it. It's just they won't give anything new. And I'll close the thought with this. A lot of the rebuttal that I keep seeing to that, because I have voiced that opinion here in the last week or so, the rebuttal is we have to start somewhere. We have to build a base and branch out from that. And my response to that, if I may, is that we have been there. We have built the foundation now for a couple of years. It started in 2021 with the UAP report. We know pilots are seeing them in military training exercises and military operation areas. That information, that foundation is there. No one can refute that. So it's great that Ryan Graves and David Fravor are there and their voice is in the mix. Don't get me wrong. But we're reinforcing something that we already established in 2021. We need to take that next step, hit those people that Grush was talking to, hit even Grush under oath with a few more pointed questions, and go from there. But that's what I'd like to see, not to go off on a tangent. This is about you, Matt. I'm not me. But that's my reaction.
And this is where, to take it back to maybe question 4 of yours, but this is where, or maybe it was 6, but it'll be interesting because, again, we have the Senate side. And so I'm curious, I'm even going to ask Burchett now, I'm curious what their calculation was and whether they were thinking, oh, hey, let's paint the broader picture, have Grush there, and then when the Senate has their hearing, they'll connect the dots more. But especially with Luna, what she was telling me made it seem like she really wanted to get the American people more up to speed on some of these conversations that, are probably settled in UFO Twitter, for lack of a better term. And so who knows? A lot of times we think all these steps for lawmakers, and then it turns out like, nope, this is just what they did. These are the people who had time. Yeah. So we'll see.
You could absolutely be right that they're trying to lay the foundation and inform the American people. I think maybe I'm in the, not to say it's the right or wrong mindset, but more in the mindset that they, meaning the American people, have had their chance to pay attention to the 25,000 news articles and news broadcasts and going a little bit broader with the podcasts and stuff like that. But I mean, mainstream media has covered this a lot. For me, I'm in that mindset that, hey, if you're not paying attention yet, then you're probably just not paying attention. Let's move on for those that have paid attention, because if there is something to Grush's claims, if there's something to that, let's not give the foundation yet again about pilots seeing this. That foundation is laid. Let's drive this home. And that's where I'm at. We can only hope.
Because Grush, for lack of a better term, is the shiny object of the day, because he's a shiny freaking object.
Yeah.
And I think they have a lot to deal with just with him and his claims. But hey, I'm not a member of Congress because I don't want to be, for one, but also I don't think I could ever get enough people to vote for me. So I got no dog in this fight. Just a microphone.
I bet there's at least one or two watching this video that absolutely would vote for you. So joking aside, though, my sincere compliments for your journalism, for going out there, for getting the story, for not sitting at your desk and just kind of writing whatever. So much respect for that, man. I really do appreciate your angle and you pushing for answers, but obviously your time today. So thank you for that.
I've been clocking about 7 miles a day chasing these lawmakers. They're only in like 3 days this week, and then they're gone all next month. So
they're pulling the heavy work week again, huh?
Doing about like 50, 60 interviews a day on this topic and then others as well. Oh, and all those interviews with the senators, they're going to slowly, or at a certain point, it'll be a waterfall, but they're going to start dropping very regularly once Congress leaves for the month of August. So stay tuned. Your lawmaker should be on the list.
Askapoll.com is the website. Matt Laszlo is the investigative journalist and professor extraordinaire. I want to make sure that we plug this tonight. If you are watching the premiere of this on the Black Vaults channel, make sure that shortly after on Matt's Discord, correct? So you can get more information on this on his website, but on your Discord channel, give everybody a rundown so they will come from this interview to you over there. What are you going to be doing?
Yeah, we're calling them listening sessions. But again, because I have all these raw interviews, raw exclusive interviews with so many members of Congress, it's easier because I have a day job writing for a handful of magazines and whatnot. I'm like, it's easier in real time just to play some of the new audio live for you all. And so Congressman Tim Burchett has promised me an exclusive today. It's either going to happen at tonight's House vote at 6:30, or he'll give me a call. So we're going to have fresh stuff from him answering some of these questions. And then also going to play some fresh, never before heard Adam Schiff tape. And then also Senator Mike Rounds. People had questions about what was the term they used 19 times in Schumer's UAP bill? Non-human intelligence.
Non-human intelligence, yeah.
So we have one of Schumer's co-authors, Senator Mike Rounds, explaining why they use the term non-human intelligence, which, to give a tease on it, he says does encompass AI.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool. Well, I'm going to definitely try and tune in myself to that. Make sure you check out the website again, askapoll.com. You'll be able to see all the details about joining that Discord channel and the live chat tonight. Matt, thank you again for your time. Get out there into the field, get some more audio for all of us, because we're lapping it up, man. We really do appreciate it.
I take orders. Yes, sir.
Very good. Well, Matt, thanks again. And thank you all for listening and watching. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time.